It's November 27th, 2001. This is TNT. Tonight's talk is on Leela. Good evening. This is getting to be a nice-sized group. Slowly, the group changes from the curious to the ones that are supposed to be here. And as that happens, of course, the talks all get better because now the talks are always going according to who's here, but as the people who are focused are here, then the talks get more interesting, I think. This always happened with Robert. He always said he would rather have 5 people there than 500, because what he'd like to do is leave behind 5 or 10 people that had got the whole thing, rather than 500 people who came around every once in a while and thought they learned something and got high for a few minutes and then left and went home and were immediately right back in it. So this is getting better. Robert always used to, thing I remember him saying most, which is the thing that I use as my answering machine message, is all is well and everything is unfolding exactly the way it should. And that's sort of what the talk was about last time. It was about how painful it is to know how things ought to be, because they never turn out to be that way. They always turn out to be how they are, which is how they're supposed to unfold. And if we have an idea of how we think things should go, then we have a yardstick to measure them against. And as my other guru Rajneesh used to say, the difference between, he used to say that God's will is what's happening and my will is what I want, and the difference is pain. And the intensity of the pain is the amount of difference between what I want and what's happening multiplied by how badly I want it my way. So that's what the last talk was about. And it came to me after that there's a couple of more attitudes, ways of looking at things that I've picked up over the years that are very comfortable things to know and comfortable things to remember and bring about serenity and comfort and allow me to stop trying to guess how things ought to be or know how things ought to be. Robert talked about these a lot as well. There are 2 words that come from the Sanskrit that are used a lot in Eastern talks and in Advaita Vedanta. One of them is Maya, which we've all heard about. Maya translates roughly as the grand illusion. And the other one is Leela, which translates very unprecisely as the play of the gods. And Leela is the name I've chosen for this work that we do here. Obviously, it appealed to me the fact that Lee is in there. Usually it's spelled L-E-E-L-A with just one A, or L-I-L-A is another way that you'll see it in books sometimes, but L-E-E-L-A was already gone as far as a license plate, so I figured 2 A's with the second one to make AA wasn't inappropriate either. So this is sort of AA Leela, what we're doing here. Leela means the play of the gods. And we'll talk a little bit tonight about the Leela way of looking at things. The underlying premise of all of these things, and it's also an underlying premise of AA, is that either everything is God or nothing is God, is the way it's phrased in the big book, and the way it's usually phrased in the higher teachings is they don't give you the choice. They say everything is God, or all there is God, or all there is consciousness, which is God. And yet we see all these bodies here sitting in chairs and cats wandering around and things like this. And how do we get that all there is God? And the answer to that is what Leela is all about. If you consider everything as an expression of God, and all of this as a game that God's playing, as a play. In fact, we can even think of it as a play in the thespian sense of play as well. Then God's the creator, the only creator, and so God wrote the play. And God's the only substance, so God gets to obviously be the stage, and God's the scenery, and God must also be appearing as all the people in it, so God's the actors, God's the actresses, God's the audience, God's the one that's out there cheering or booing or hissing or whatever the audience is doing. And it's in that sense that I like to think of the term Leela, the play of the gods, where the whole thing is God's play. God has written this play, and God has on the stage, which we call the universe, and God has populated it with itself as all the actors and actresses, 8 billion of them. God has written this incredibly complicated play in which all 8 billion people have parts that interreact with each other. God has written the play so that it goes on scene after scene. It takes a role as this person, and then this person dies, and then this person shows up again in another scene in a different body. And so part of the play is also the reincarnation, and part of the play is the karma that we hear about, that what we put in is what we get out, or what goes around comes around, or whatever we do to somebody will come back to get us sometimes in a future lifetime. And if you think about the intricacies of having it work out so that everybody gets back exactly what they put out, no more, no less. Across lifetimes, I beat my wife, and 2 lifetimes later, she's now my father, and I'm his daughter, and he beats me, and it's fair because that's karma, because that's the way it is. I did the beating one lifetime, and I get to do the being beaten the next lifetime. It's a very intricate, very complicated play. That's sort of the view that we can have of Leela to sort of see what we're talking about. But the question then comes up, well, this doesn't feel like God doing all this to itself. This feels like me and you and all these people. And so now let's suppose we're actors and actresses in a play. And suppose we've gone through a few scenes and we forget that we're really actors and actresses. I mean, suppose I'm in a play, or suppose you're in a play, and all the other players are in the play, and the script's been written, and the scenery's all set, and everything's working out fine. And then you, as an actor or actress, forget who you really are, and you start believing your part. That's sort of the way things are. And think about the implications of that. So you start believing your part. You forget that you're really Susie or Pete or Joe, the actor or actress, and you now think you're this hero or this villain, whatever part it is you're playing. And of course, if you forget you're playing a part, you also forget that all the others and actors and actresses on the stage are playing parts. You start taking it personally. They're doing that to me. You get resentments at these people. You get really angry at that person who just did that to you. I mean, it's in the play. It was written, years ago. I mean, O'Neill might have written it back in 1912. I mean, the line's in the play. This is not personal. But this person says it, and you've forgotten that you're an actor, and you've forgotten that you're in a play, and you're believing this. So you see everything that's happening, and you take it personally, and you develop resentments, and start figuring out ways that you can get back. And of course, you lose all your skill as an actor because you've now bought the part. You're doing whatever you're doing, and you've forgotten all the skills and arts that you had to learn in order to be a really good actor. So you're becoming very poor at your part. You're no longer doing your part well. You're now doing a lousy job of your part. And this is sort of the situation that we're in right now. We've all forgotten, not just that we're actors, we've all forgotten that we're God acting. We've forgotten that this is God expressed as you and as me. The point of this is that if you can keep in mind that all there is God, then you can keep in mind this concept of Leela. And if I can just remember that you're doing your part really well, then I don't get upset with you, or resentful at you, or angry at you, or uncomposed at you at all. In fact, I'm sitting here doing my part, but I'm quite impressed with how well you're doing your part, really, as you're sitting there doing this really insane rage right in my face. I'm saying, wow, boy, I'm glad they gave her that part. She's really good at that. Wouldn't that be a different attitude?
Yeah.
It would be so different if I always... That happened this morning, as a matter of fact. I wasn't even thinking about it, but there's somebody in the morning meeting who I dearly love, but who's quite a character, and he was in the middle of something, and I was thinking, boy, he really does a good job of being who he is, I mean, thank God God picked him for that job. He's really perfect at that, He's often so very uncomfortable doing what he's doing, but he's so very good, and nobody else could possibly do that, And if you're looking at it that way, then it doesn't matter if he's in your face or not. It doesn't matter what they do, If somebody confronts you or walks away from you or ignores you or fails to do what you would like them to do, you who knows how things ought to be, you don't have to get a resentment. What you get to do is look at them and say, oh yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's that part. He's doing that part well. It's especially useful when you're dealing with parents. Boy, is she good at being a bitchy mother. Or granddaughters. Boy, is she good at shining me on. but watching people as people who are playing their role, exactly the role they're supposed to play. And another interesting thing is that as you're watching this, you continue to play your role. I mean, right now we all have our roles. I've got the talking role tonight, and you've got the listening role tonight, but that may change in 5 minutes, who knows. Right now that's the role. We don't know how the play is written, but we're all playing our roles tonight. It's just roles. This is God talking to God, obviously to no purpose, since God already knows all this. But the play says, I talk, and the play says you listen for a while until you get bored, and then you start interrupting, or whatever the play says, and I'll say, wow, that was a good interruption, right on schedule, right on cue. Another thing that goes out immediately is my need to make decisions, right decisions. Don't have to spend a great deal of time figuring out the ramifications of everything that's gone prior to this in the plot, and what's going to come, what possible things can happen as far as how the plot might turn out, and figure out which things I want to happen and make decisions about what I should say next. In order to do that, the part's written. It's right here in my hand. I'm reading the script. The part's written. I don't have to make any decisions about it. I just have to deliver my part.
So does that mean everything's predestined? Is that what you're saying?
If you're looking at it from that viewpoint, that's what it means. If it's God reading the part, you see that the question of predestined only comes to one who's forgotten that they're the actor. If you say, does that mean my part, that means my actions are predestined, you're thinking me separate from God. The question, does that mean everything's predestined, never occurs to God who's playing the game, the whole game. You have to have individual people, individual actors and actresses who are autonomous. And that's not what the Leela concept is about. We also look at cause and effect. We all know about cause and effect. We're real sure that if I do this, this will happen. That you do something now and something happens down the line. But if you look at it from the viewpoint of a play, where does cause and effect come in? I mean, when I'm writing a play, what I have in mind is the final scene. And in order, perhaps I've got this great dramatic scene that I want to happen at the end. And because of that scene, I write everything that leads up to it. So now, did the effect cause the cause? I mean, my first decision was how I wanted it to come out, and that determined all the things that get written into the play, which appear to the people watching the play as the things that lead up to the result. So which was the cause and which was the effect? If the whole thing's already written, there is no cause and effect. It's just all unfolding exactly as it was written. There's no cause and effect in a play from the viewpoint of the actors. They're just reading their roles. From the viewpoint of the parts they're playing, there's cause and effect. It looks like this person does this, and then that person does that, and then that person does that. But in fact, what's going on is this person's reading a part, and this person's reading a part, and this person's reading a part, and there's no cause and effect about that. They all came together in order to read their parts. There's no cause and effect there at all.
There was a flashcard Barbara, I remember, used, I am the cause of it all.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I remember working with that, and really that took me back to the Leela concept. God is the cause of it all. I am the cause of it all.
From that viewpoint, yeah, her card reads at a lot of different levels. Her card also reads from the viewpoint of everything I experience as an outpicturing of my own consciousness. In that sense, I am the cause of it all. but in the sense of I is good. But I as God is a tough way to look at it. The way to look at it is God as me. God as all of it is the way to look at that. So she was talking a level down, I think, when she was saying that. Let me see what I wrote here. I always write some stuff down during the day. This stuff, points come to me, and I want to make sure I get them in. So, well, that's the picture of it. If we think we have problems, the problems are part of the script. Just like last week we thought if you think you have problems, it's because you have an opinion about how things ought to be. Prophet says somewhere, if you want the sun to come up in the east, you have no problems. If you want the sun to come from the west, you got a big problem in the west. You know, if we think we have a problem, we've forgotten who we are. We think we're the part rather than the actor. And what we're calling a problem really is just the script. It's just the karma working, or you know, the various intricacies of the plot working the way they're supposed to. It's everything unfolding exactly as it should. So that's sort of where Leela, what Leela means and why I choose Leela for this work, because that's such a comfortable place to be observing life from, if you can remember that you're not the part, but that you're the actor. So now let's just throw it open for questions about that or last week or anything at all that people want to talk about. I mean, this is just a wide open opportunity to talk about. I mean, script or kid or anything at all that people want to talk about is fine for the next half an hour or so. It's just a place for people to talk about, think about spirit. What it is an excuse to get together. It's an excuse to get together in the consciousness, and it doesn't matter what we do, as Robert would say. It's an excuse to get together, but it's a good opportunity to keep at the front of our minds those things we're working on, like script or kid or relationships or Leela or whatever.
Last time we got together, you mentioned if we wanted to measure, not so much in the front of my mind, I thought I was going to bring it back up again. We ask ourselves 4 questions. Remember what that was?
Oh, the questions about how to know what's tying you. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. The 4 lists.
Right.
The 4 lists to find out what it is that's tying you to your humanhood. And these also can be looked at as the 4 lists which show you the extent to which you think you're the part rather than the actor or actress. The first one is make a list of all the things you hate. And obviously if you've bought your own part, then you might hate the other actors and actresses, but if you remember who you are, you don't hate them. You're impressed with how well they're performing their parts, regardless of how vile their parts may appear to be relative to you. And the second one is the things you love. Same thing from the viewpoint of Leela. How can you love or hate one of the other actors? They're just doing their part. You might admire the work they're doing, but you can't take it personally if you remember you're the actor. So it's love and hate, and fear is the third one. And the fourth one is desire. These are, you can look at them in lots of different ways, but they're very useful lists. You can look at them as now we can look at them as a measure of the extent to which we're buying our part, instead of remembering that we're an actor. Or you can look at them as lists of things that are keeping you. In order to have anything on any of those four lists, you have to believe that you're an autonomous, separate human being. You know, if you know you're God, none of those things, all those lists are empty. If you always know you're God. When you know you're God, all those things are empty. When you remember you're the actor in the play, all those lists are empty. You don't have any of those relationships with any of the other actors in the play when you remember you're an actor. It's only when you forget who you are and buy the part that you start fearing things. God's not afraid of anything. You're not afraid of the other actors as an actor. So there's the extent to which you love or hate or fear or desire things is a measure of the extent to which you think you're a separate, isolated individual.
But doesn't God love everybody?
Different kind of love.
What about like love for your children?
We'll take a real good look at that. You know, the word love has so many different meanings that it's hard to draw the line on this. Many people love their children because of how good they make them look, and get angry with their children when their children don't make them look good. You know, they get angry, parents getting angry at their kids for not performing well in school or on the football field. So a lot of love for kids is not really love for kids. It's self-interest. Most human love is based in self-interest. The love that's not counted is if it's not you loving, but God loving through you, then that's a whole different ballgame.
So like that pure sense of joy that just...
The selfless love that AA talks about, the for fun and for free, just because they're there, being of service type of thing, that's a whole different thing. But this is the human love that we're talking about. Often we use the word love when we should be talking about being in heat. And often it's very self-serving. You know, I love you because of what you do for me, or what you can you know, and that's got nothing to do with love. So that's the distinction on love. Certainly there is. I mean, Robert loved everybody, and there was no Robert. There was nobody to even make those lists, because those lists would be lists about the ones that Robert loved or hated or feared or desired, and there was no Robert even. You know, there was no ego there at all. So the love was just God's love.
So when you're in consciousness and humanhood, is there like a battle that goes on?
Oh, yes.
Because I feel like lately I've been having a struggle. I've been doing a lot of contrary actions and going through stuff, and there's like a pull. There's a pull that goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can go from being in this pure state of bliss and gratitude and knowing that all is right with the world and it's unfolding as it should, and then 2 minutes later I'm just like...
Yep. Yeah, that certainly is true. Joel Goldsmith, there's a series of like 10 tapes that Joel, 10 classes he taught in sequence that are called Living Between Two Worlds, which is exactly what he's talking about. In fact, there's a book, a Goldsmith book called Living Between Two Worlds, which is really the editing together of those tapes. It's also the reason that there's script and kid work, is because Barbara's students were having very high experience, you know, they had clear in the clouds, you know, and having these blissful experiences, you know, and 3 minutes later they're throwing tantrums. And it's because there was still humanhood in them. Okay? So certainly as we grow spiritually, there are pieces of humanhood left behind. And these all have to be worked through. And that's exactly what kid work is about. Humanhood and kid are identical, are synonymous. When we're talking about kid work, we don't mean it in the psychology sense of it. When we talk about kid work, we're talking about the parts that are still human, the parts that, and these are all based in a misbelief about the truth. These are all based in believing you're playing the part, that you're the part, not the actor, and they're all based in fear. So when you get yanked back, it invariably means you're afraid of something, and the thing to do is to look at the fear, identify the fear, and do kid work with it essentially, which means, work yourself through it. I mean, discover the lie in the fear. Well, the fear is a lie. There's nothing that can hurt you if you know who you really are. So the fear, anything that you're afraid of means that there's a lie in your consciousness about that. If all there is God, then there can be nothing to fear. So what you're fearing is something you're imagining. Okay? And that's the lie.
That your mind is creating.
That your mind is creating.
Okay.
It's part of the
and
Leela.
it's to keep you in your human.
Well, that's what it does. I don't know that there's a purpose in it, but, Barbara says that, and it seems right, everything's born in a state of ignorance. Puppies come in as puppies and grow up to be dogs. People come in as babies and grow up to be people, but also souls come in as ignorant souls and grow up to be God consciousness. But that process is over many, many lives. So there's still some places that haven't grown up. We've all done a lot of work because we're here tonight talking about this and consciously on the path, and of the 8 billion, roughly 8 billion of them are not consciously on the path yet. They're still fighting with getting enough to eat and enough to get in sleep and stuff like that, and they're very much in the material plane. So we've all done a lot of work to be here talking about this tonight, but we're not done, or we wouldn't be here talking about this tonight. So that invariably means that you're believing the part rather than the act, rather than remembering that you're the actor, and you're believing a lie. And that lie brings up fear. And we say the kid has the fear. And so you look at the truth, present the kid with truth.
When you say that God's will is what's happening and my will is what I want, then if what's happening is like a plane crashing into a building, so then that's saying that's what's happening, so that's God's will.
From the viewpoint that such a thing happened.
Yeah. That's the thing I've got to error. Yeah, that's the thing.
Then it's karmic. Okay? And it's part of the Leela. Now the truth is that none of that happened. That nothing's happening. That it's all just an appearance in consciousness. And this is what we're going to talk about next time. That's more easily talked about in the viewpoint of Maya. But Joel says, and on all the spiritual lights, Mahatma Gandhi says, everybody says that with any sort of a light, that nobody dies. Robert would say, who sees that? When you bring in him, well, what about the people that in the plane that flew into the Trade Center? And Robert would say, who sees that? See, it's part of the Leela, and the one who sees that is the part, not the actor. What the actor sees is the story being told about the plane crashing, and, as part of the script. As part of that, there may be some sort of a scene off stage or something that allows you to see that or think of it, or pictures on it. And they may have a picture on a television set that they show on stage so that you can see that. But if you were the actor, you'd know that was a prop. but no, you're the part. And so you believe that.
So once we write the 4 lists, what do we do with them?
Be aware of them.
So just kind of go into a state of observance?
Yeah, I would say that, first of all, seeing them is the important thing. But, once you're aware of something, then you pay attention to it. And if you start to observe let's say it's a desire, you start watching your desire for that thing, okay? And you become aware of what it feels like to desire that. What it's costing you to run around constantly thinking about having that, okay? And you observe that desire and get an honest appraisal. I mean, none of us ever think about how painful our desires are, how we spend, hours every day worrying about our desires, whether we're going to get them or not, and such like. So you pay attention and you watch the desire. And then if you're really smart and you actually get it, then you watch what happens. And you say, I got my desire. And you see about 3 minutes of happiness. And the next thing in the list goes boing! And you've got a new desire. Right? I mean, that's what desires are. It's a push-down stack, a jack-in-the-box with a spring, and there's plates on there, and you pop the plate off, and the next one's right there, just like that. And you pull that one off, and the next one's up, and then it's a bottomless pit. So you see that, and eventually you see the futility of having any desires at all. And they go away, but through the seeing of it, they diminish.
Okay.
Once you see what it's costing you, that particular desire will diminish. Hate too. I mean, if you hate somebody, stop and look at yourself when you're hating. Ooh, does that feel bad? I mean, your stomach's in a knot, your whole being's in a knot. You're ugly and dark, and And think for a second, what would it feel like if I loved that person? And light and open, and so you do that kind of work with them. First, you have to see it, and the list is to make you see it. And you ain't done till the lists are empty and stay empty.
So your lists are empty?
I didn't say that. I said you ain't done. You ain't done until your lists are empty and stay empty. Of course, if there's no you, there are no lists.
Okay, so who I really am is God. That's who I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And so God is watching God play a part.
Mm-hmm.
And the part has been, there was a childhood in the part, and then there was a teenagerhood, and then there was a person in their 20s, and then they got involved with drugs and alcohol and got to the program, and then got married, and then had kids, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the script.
Mm-hmm.
And God's just playing that part.
Just being God. Mm-hmm.
So just keep watching?
That's what he's doing. It's doing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you think you're Teresa that all the other stuff comes in.
Yep.
How does that work into what it is you do? If you hate what you do as far as working or liking what work, if you don't like work, I'm going through terrible.
Well, how does it work in? It's a role that's being played. I mean, you as an actress could play a loving mother, or you as an actress could play an axe murderess. Right? It would have no effect on you. It's a role, it's a job, it's an act. So what you do is you pay attention while you're doing that, and you play a very good mother part if your part is to be a mother, and if your part is to be an axe murderess, you play a very good axe murderess. But why get involved in it? I mean, if you're playing the part of an axe murderess, then you probably shouldn't resent the people who are playing the part of cops. You know? That would be a real waste of energy. See, if you're worried about doing a job that you don't like, you're believing the part. If you knew who you were, you would be observing how well you're playing the part of doing work you don't like. It's a step back.
So it's almost like being in a state of observance, right?
Almost like it.
It's like you're walking here, but you're really over here.
Mm-hmm.
There's the body, and then here you are checking out what you're doing.
That's right.
Ah,
That's right.
okay.
Transcendental consciousness is the buzzword that was around in the 60s and 70s with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi or somebody like that, you know, and the TM meditation and all that. Transcendental meditation, well, transcendental consciousness means that half a step back, where you're transcending it,
Okay.
where you're looking at it, instead of being bought by it. So you're in the play, and you're playing the part of an axe murderess, okay? If you think you're the axe murderess, this is a very busy thing, and you're all caught up in it, and you're worried about whether you're going to get blood on you, or get sent to prison, or get electrocuted, and you're worried about all this stuff, right? But if you remember you're the actress, then you're working on technique, acting technique, not killing technique, but acting technique. You're making sure your voice is loud enough for the audience to hear and all this, but you're not in a turmoil, you're not emotional, you're not concerned, your life is not, you know, all this stuff. And the actions that continue are exactly the same, although perhaps they're a little better now that remembering you're the actor. Perhaps you can do a bit more ghoulish a job of swinging the axe because you remember you're the actress. But see, you've transcended the state of being the axe murderess, and now you're the actress.
So this is Dharma.
Dharma is just truth.
I thought Dharma was the actions. Like you gave the example of the person that was robbing the guru, and his followers wanted to get them, and he said, no, this is their Dharma.
Yeah, but Dharma is not nearly as limited. Dharma is path, and Dharma is their truth. Dharma is a lot more than that. But yeah, the role you're playing is a good way to look. I mean, you could certainly call that your Dharma. You know, you've been assigned a role that you're going to play. The interesting thing about you as the actor or actress is that whether you believe the role or not, you still carry out the role. You still carry out the role. Okay, it's not like there's ever a choice there. I'm not implying that you when you forget that you're the actor and become caught up in the role, you still do the role. Exactly the same actions that you would do if you remembered it. The difference, though, is how you feel about it, the turmoil about it. And that's what a transcendental consciousness means. That's transcendence. Transcendence is taking that half step back and looking at it.
Okay.
It's what script work is all about. You know, if you're having a script event and I say you're in script, you know, you say, oh my God, and everything's gone. All the energy's gone. You've dropped everything. You're now looking at the script instead of being in script. And just that simple. All of a sudden you're watching yourself do it. You're looking at it instead of being caught up in it. This is also called, they call it the watcher. In some of the teachings they talk about becoming the watcher. Watching yourself do it, observing what you're doing instead of being caught up in it. Is night and day. And like I say, it's so different if you're looking at people and observing how well they're playing their part rather than buying it. See, that's transcending the situation.
So like the victim of the axe murder is like the soap opera star whose contract didn't renew for next season, and God needed to write them out of the show, essentially.
Of this scene, yeah.
Of this scene,
Yeah.
because they don't have a part in the storyline any longer.
Yeah, for this particular storyline, right.
Okay.
Robert always would say, you know, he would talk about it's like looking through a keyhole. In fact, he would use that. He said, you look through a keyhole and you see a man strangling his wife, and you think how terrible that is. You know, he strangles her to death. He says, but if you would just open the door so you could get in there and take a good look, you'd look back to here to the left, and you'd see where she killed him last lifetime. And he says, then you look over here to the right, and you see the two of them standing over there drinking coffee and laughing about it together. You know, I mean, nothing's happening. You know. Yeah, I mean. So I kill you this scene, and you kill me next scene, but after the play, we don't have a beer. You know, I mean, no big deal. I'm assuming that the alcoholism is part of the play, not the actor and actor.
Then why is it that our human, okay, like the fact that we need to rest, or our humanhood tells us we need to rest, do all those things to keep us centered, that when I am not centered and in check, my expression as God, you know, I am meditating daily, I'm getting enough rest, I'm getting the proper nutrition, but yet I still manifest, you know, colds and flu or whatever, you know. Am I buying into that part of the humanhood, that what I'm surrounded in? Because I'm now in this consciousness where everything is, you know, everything's focused on washing your hands, disinfecting this, making sure the environment is clean.
Sure.
And then I'm actually having to say those things, verbalizing it. It's an expression to other human beings. I mean, so
Sure.
what do?
Work on it until you can remember who you are and transcend it.
I mean, I'm doing the nonsense technique.
I know, you're doing as much as you can, and it takes what it takes. I mean, it's not a decision, it's a consciousness.
Okay.
Knowing intellectually that all there is God is not sufficient. When you're in the experience of the presence of God, then you don't have the flu.
So
Christy might.
Yeah.
But you don't.
So I feel like I get, at least through my life, I have various degrees of knowing the presence. You know,
Yes,
like when
absolutely.
I'm sitting by myself in the morning in my meditation,
You bet.
I'm definitely in the presence.
Absolutely.
But I want to be able to take that presence into my workplace.
Absolutely.
And it's very difficult. It's like once I get into that classroom, it's just like this button goes click, and I am like in the humanhood for that 8 hours. You know?
Yeah. That's the way it is.
And I don't even see the mistake in my thought process until at the end of the day. It's like, wow, you know what? You were really trying to control that child. And if you would have just said, it's like, it's an afterthought. I'm not like getting it.
That's true, and that's the way it is. And what happens is you practice and you practice and you practice, and you become more and more aware. It stays with you longer, and you start remembering it more frequently during the day, and it changes slowly over a long period of time. It's taken you years and lifetimes to get as conditioned as you were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And you've really been just doing this disciplined work for 4 or 5 years, 6 years. And, we have no idea how many hundreds of years you spent getting conditioned to where you are now, and it takes a while to deprogram it. The fact, your understanding is exactly right. The fact is that you're very much in a consciousness of the reality of disease and the germ theory of disease. People are immersed in that over there, and you need to do what you're doing, which is saying nonsense and such like, and defending yourself as much as you can, but still, that may or may not work. It will work better and better as time passes and as you practice that more and more. But until you don't even think nonsense.
So when I buy the cough drops and the cold remedies...
You've bought it, yeah. Your history. You've bought it.
So the fact that I got a flu shot for this season, does that mean I'm screwed for the whole season?
No, but that's why but it meant you were screwed at the moment. Yeah, that means you bought it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fact is that if you're taking flu shots, you believe in flu, don't you? If you believe in flu, then you're a statistic. If you don't believe in flu, you're a statistic. If you know that flu is inconceivable, then there's no flu. Okay? Now, obviously, those are not two cut and dried places, More and more you don't believe in flu, and more you know it's impossible, and more, and the chances of flu diminish. But the fact is, that people who have very high consciousness, when they go into spiritual healing, it may take them years to get the clarity. It's practice, it's muscle building. Not quick.
So it's probably best, it's funny how, as I show up here, I start looking at things so different. I would get these newsletters, health newsletters, and they talk about, how many colds they're going to, all that stuff. And I got this thing in the mail, this renewal, and I go, I can't renew it. I don't want to read this anymore. I don't.
Right.
I don't. Okay. And then
you don't.
Yeah. And I used to listen to the health show, and I'm going, I don't want to listen to this. This isn't good. I don't want.
Right, you don't. Absolutely
that's
not.
what's happening. And then
You don't want to watch the news in the morning before you go to work. You don't want to listen to the news on the radio on the way in. You don't want to listen to that stuff.
Yeah, that's
It's all lies.
Yeah, that's
It's all lies, like the plane flying into the tower is a lie.
And then, but then
It's all
there's this
hearsay.
other thing that we do want to eat healthy. 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. That's different than.
No?
It is. No.
Not a bit.
I think I'm going to have ice cream.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're as clear about calories as you are about germs, then you can go home and eat ice cream. How can it possibly get you fat? There's no power in anything. If it's all God, then the ice cream's God too. How can anything get you fat? If you're as clear about it. But there are lots of people that believe ice cream will make you fat, so you better be real clear that it doesn't. I'm not that clear. But it's a lie. The fact that you have a body is a lie. The fact that you need health, nutrition, and rest. Nutrition, rest, and exercise is a lie. Who needs it? You believe that's believing you're the part. You've bought the part. God doesn't need health, doesn't need food, rest, or nutrition, or exercise.
But you feel better.
Who does?
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't feel any better. God doesn't feel any better when you eat well.
What about things like yoga? It's like a state of meditation. Doesn't that bring you closer to the Lord?
Brings the one who thinks they're further closer, perhaps. God doesn't have any distance from God. Now, we're just talking about, and I'm saying, yes, please do your yoga. And yes, please do get your food and your rest and your exercise. And yes, please don't eat the ice cream if you don't want to get fat. And do all that stuff until that stops. But be aware that all those are human. Those are all measures of your humanhood.
So it only affects us while we're here on this human plane because there is such a large human consciousness that believes the error. So that's why, like, you were describing the push-pull, the conflict, that, I mean, so we really, so are we subject, we're subject to it because,
Sure.
I mean,
But the reason that you took a body, again, is because you're subject to it, because you're part of it.
so how is it, like, I could go visit
If
somebody
you didn't have a human consciousness, you wouldn't have if you'd gotten clear this lifetime, you won't put on a body again. Once you're clear, you're done. So the fact that you're wearing a body means you're not done. So how is it?
Okay, then why is it that I can go see somebody in the hospital that has the appearance of cancer and I can sit there and talk to them and know the truth of them, but not of myself?
You're considerably less invested in them. That's why I can be so perfectly clear about you people.
I still think there's a me.
Yeah, that's right. You think there's a you. Sure. It's much harder to heal yourself than somebody else. I mean, look at it realistically. In order to, if you call me for a healing, I say, oh, okay, and I do it. Do whatever I do, okay? Fine, no investment. Here's a piece of information presented to me. Hey, I need a healing, and I say nonsense, okay? But for myself, I mean, I have to be experiencing the flu before I can think I need the flu to make the case to myself to say nonsense. I've already got it before I can say nonsense, right?
Okay.
And so I've already lost half the battle. So now I got to really clear that that's not. I can't just throw a nonsense at that. I got to get really clear about that. But see, I don't have that problem with you because I didn't spend the night with thrashing around with the symptoms. It's much easier. Much easier to work on somebody else. Much easier to see the truth about somebody else. Because you're not invested. To the extent that you don't, Robert would not have had that issue. In fact, it did not have that issue. It's just so clear to see that, Robert didn't think that was his body. He didn't think that body he was wearing was any different than any other body. He didn't think he was wearing it. That was just one more body in the picture, and it made no difference to him at all whose body it was. He was not, had no association with any of them, so it made no difference to him.
So is it like a similar experience, like sometimes I can, like, a girl will call me up and be having a script event, and I can clearly see because what's going on because I'm not invested, but yet 4 days later, I can be in a script event with the very same thing,
Sure.
but find it harder to really see the truth of the situation because it's me.
Because you're in kid.
Okay.
She's in kid, you're an adult. She's in kid, she calls you, which throws you immediately into adult, and so you sit there looking at the truth about her. It's plain, most obvious thing in the world. 4 days later, somebody does something, triggers your kid goes into fear. If you call that same person, you'd throw her into adult just by calling her. And she'd look at you and say, gee, that looks familiar. There's an echo in here. And you say, what do you mean by that? Sure. It's all a direct measure of how real you think you are. Or it's a direct measure of how real that particular part that God's playing is acting like it thinks it is. See, in reality, it's not how real you think you are. That's talking like there's a you. In reality, it's God's playing a part called Christy, in which Christy thinks she's Christy. But it's all God, it's all consciousness. All we're really doing in this is trying to shake the platform from which you tend to look at things enough that you can get a glimpse of this, and then you get to work on it for years. Or lifetimes. Or get it, that, because that happens too. Oh, fuck, I thought I was me! And it's done, just like that, you know? And it's done just like that, possibly forever. So, I mean, all it takes is a click. But there are little clicks and there are big clicks. Mm-hmm. And you may not even, you know, I mean, I like I keep saying, I don't want you to even believe that this is a correct way of perceiving it. I'm describing a way of perceiving things that if you could perceive it from this point, obviously your life would be considerably more comfortable. But I'm not making any claim for the truth of any of this. My experience is that as I have progressed, the clicks that I get along the way, some little, some big, all make it much more obvious to me the truth of what I'm saying. But that has no information for you. I'm just talking, my experience seems to be that this is probably true because every click I've had makes it clear to me that this is the truth. But you have to have your own clicks, otherwise it's just hearsay. But it's a lot easier to watch them playing their roles, especially parents and granddaughters, brothers and sisters, the people that are close to you. If you can watch them playing their roles and observe how really good they are at their roles, you know, I mean, some people are really good at what they do.
Yeah, my husband's got some good roles.
Yeah, he's not bad at that part, is he?
He plays some good roles, and I was thinking that yesterday, that he has a lot of this, like I'll go to shake our dog's bed out, and I'll leave the door open, and he doesn't, well, you're letting the cold air in. I mean, there's all those kind of little things. If I could look at it as his role.
It's his job to say that.
I know, it is, isn't it?
Sure, that's the whole point. I mean, it's newcomer's job to be flaky. You know, I mean, it's... Yeah, and be self-centered. I mean, yeah, you don't get upset about that. You just look at newcomers. They're supposed to be flaky and self-centered and totally self-obsessed, right? I mean, it's their job. That's the role they're playing, you know? After 5 years, they get to play the knowledgeable one, and after 10 years, they get to talk about how stupid they were when they were 5 years sober, thinking they were knowledgeable, and, you know, I mean, they're just all a role, you know? And you just watch.
Yeah, because I guess, you know, where I try not to take things personally, but that kind of rockets it into another dimension.
Sure.
If it's just a role, it certainly can't be personal.
That means you think there's a you. You're believing your role.
There is no you.
Means you're believing the role.
I really see a lot of that vast difference between the intellectual and really knowing.
Mm-hmm.
My sponsors tell me that when I was new, you don't really know it. You know, and I'd get all
I do too.
But I see that really clearly.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't really know it.
But you have to know it first before you can experience it. I mean, you know, you need to get pointed in the right direction. I mean, the finger pointing to the moon is pure nonsense. I mean, because that's not what we're talking about. But the fact is, if nobody's pointing, you're never going to look in the right direction. Joel talks very much about, the first step is learning the letter of the truth.
Yeah, one of the six today.
You learn the letter of the truth, and you immerse yourself in the letter of truth. And you hear it and hear it and hear it, and it breaks loose the conditioning. Thins out the molasses until there's a possibility of some movement in there. This thing is filled with very thick molasses. And it thins it out until there's a possibility of some movement in there, And then you start getting the clicks and the pops, and those are all totally outside of the molasses. And those truths, there's no doubt about. I mean, there are clicks that you get that are true, and it's just so true that I had one of those when after I did my fourth step. I had a real clarity that everybody in my life had been doing the very best they could, and I just finished doing a autobiography style four-step, writing over several days while I was fasting up in the mountains, and I finished that, and I out walking afterwards, just finished it and put down the pencil, and I was out walking, and I had this real clarity that everybody was doing the very best they could in my life, my parents and everybody, and then about 1 minute later I got this real clarity that so was I, and that was so real that there was no possibility of it not being true. I mean, it was like God's truth. Many times since then, it has not been very clear to me at all. But I remember the experience, and the experience was so powerful that I still choose to trust that over the appearance. I mean, sometimes it's real clear that you people are not doing the best you can. But I had that clarity, and that was so real that I can't doubt that. Okay, so that's the kind of clicks you get, and then, now those truths are truths that are mine, that nobody can take away. Like Joel says, if you ever really see that 2 + 2 is 4, then you'll never doubt it. You can't lose that. No matter how many people tell you 2 + 2 is 5, you're just going to laugh. I mean, you just can't lose that. Once you get it at that level, you've got it. So that's the way it works: is that we get these things and we get them, and they add up, and then little clicks add up into big clicks. And the other good news is that every little tiny click changes the whole picture. The whole picture gets better because picture is the outpicturing of the current state of your consciousness, including that last little tiny click. So every click changes the whole picture. Which is the good news. We don't have to wait until we get it all before we make any progress. The humanhood does, so to speak, improve as we're doing the work. The so to speak humanhood, so to speak, improves. Cool. So we'll do one more talk in 2 weeks, and that'll be it for this year. Then we'll start again in January. We'll skip one, in other words, because it's Christmas. So 2 weeks from now we'll have a talk, and then 2 weeks from that is Christmas. So we won't have a talk that night, and then 2 weeks from that is New Year's, and then the next week we'll meet again. And next week we'll talk about Maya, which is a lot like Leela, but much more fun. Now we don't have to stay on the stage. Thanks, guys. I love you all.